excited to have you on the podcast today. I'm so excited. I know I just told you, but I am seriously a fangirl. I'm so excited to. Yeah. It doesn't hurt to hear it. I know. I know.
Thanks for having us. It was really exciting when you reached out.
Yeah.
We've been listening to some of your episodes this morning.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm excited to add to it and talk a little bit more about healing from your breakup and how to build stronger relationships after that. Because I think some of us, not even, of course, we were leaving a romantic relationship that we didn't do well, whatever that meant. And then there's other relationships you also lose when you go through divorce, like maybe your other family, maybe your friends, that sort of thing. So for me, I know it's essential to think about how can I do relationships better? Who do I need in my life? Like all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Great questions.
So to get us started, can you give us a little background on who you are, how you met, your relationship, and what your background might be in breakup or divorce?
Yeah, this is a serious lesbian love story.
Yes.
What level would you put this at?
Like, oh, we are, I think
level 5.
We made it in
5 out of 5.
Yeah. What would you say?
Man, well, my experience with divorce is a little different than yours.
Oh, you're right. I didn't.
Yeah, mine goes back a little bit farther. I was married to a man in 2011 and left that relationship, that marriage within 2 years after I had come into my identity and met a woman that I was working with who became my wife eventually. And then I experienced divorce with her. So the first divorce I experienced with my ex-husband was one that I chose to pursue. And the second one that I experienced was one that I moved through. I didn't choose it necessarily. But yeah. And that's how you and I met, was eventually through that divorce with my ex-wife and your ex-wife.
Yeah.
Kind of fill in exactly how we met.
I mean, if anybody wants like the nitty gritty details, it's on. We have a podcast we released. I think just the energy to get out the story almost. But, so it was, mid-COVID 2020, and my wife and I at the time were living in St. Louis, originally from Oregon, but we're there for like a 9-month travel position. And Ash was in Oklahoma. We were working with queer couples at the time. And started, my wife and I at the time were working with queer couples at the time, and we started a support group for non-affirming queer couples with non-affirming family and friends. And so my ex-wife, we call them H and L. H my ex, H started this support group, and Ash and her ex-wife joined, her wife at the time. So pretty quickly, this intensity started happening between, initially I thought it was the three of them, like this friendship, this deep camaraderie. We were new, so we didn't have a lot of friends, so I was excited, like she met somebody, even if it was over online. And probably within 2 months or so, same morning, October 17th, we both were woken up and told that they don't want to stay in the marriage. We weren't aware that we were living parallel lives. Different states. You want to add anything at this point?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was that separation was a shock in every way. And they both made the decision to go ahead and separate, and we were living the same life, had no idea the other was going through it. They did a pretty good job of trying to keep us from having communication with one another.
We had met one time. They had driven up to have dinner with us one evening, and so it was such a whirlwind, like a few hours of interaction, and then I thought it was just a moment that we met some people, but ultimately, they told us they want a divorce, and then we ended up going our separate ways. I moved back to Oregon. Ash moved out into her own place, and then Ash got the information first about the affair that they were in, and reached out to me on social media.
So your ex-wives were together is what you're saying.
Yeah.
H and L. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So H and L ended
Okay.
up in an affair.
Yeah.
Yep. And so Ash reached out and said, hey, I think, she reached out to me on Instagram, and then we ended up on the phone together for like 5 hours talking, like putting all the pieces together. Cause that was the deepest level of grief I had ever experienced. And I was so confused on what had happened. Like I think, being in a relationship, especially like coming out was big, then to get with a woman and marry a woman was a lot. And so it was like my biggest nightmare was for her to say, I don't want this. Like I had already lost so much to have it. So I asked Ash probably within a week, I said, can I fly you out to Oregon? I want to like really meet you face to face. So
and so that brings you to today.
Fast
forward to today.
Fast forward a couple of years later, we're here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. No, it was a real relief to get to meet and connect with Dawn, because we had just gone, not only the greatest loss that both of us had experienced that time, but we had just spent months being completely lied to about everything, the friendship that was building, the relationship that was happening. And so it kind of felt like you were walking around in a fog for a little while, trying to put the puzzle pieces of your past back together. Yeah.
Right. Divorce is hard enough for anybody. And then on top of that intensity of the deceit in it, makes it.
To be in like that level of grief, and then to have to still like pay your bills and care for, I had a brand new puppy at the time. So many little details of life, like, it was brutal. But on that phone call, full transparency, Tara, on the phone call,
yes, please.
I felt two things on that call. I felt like, wow, she talks a lot. I thought she really verbal processor. And then the other thing was like, there was something in her voice that was moving in me, where I noticed it, and I was like, no way. And is this even gonna be, this is way too messy. Like, so from the first conversation, there was something that felt more than just like a trauma bond. I think that was absolutely something playing out in the moment. Well, you don't like that phrase, right?
Well, it's not it's
correct not accurate.
use
it's not
of
accurate.
trauma bond.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think
we had both experienced a trauma. And had connected through it in a way.
Yeah. So we ended up talking pretty much every day after that. Like, how are you doing? What support are you getting? I talked her into coming out to Bend, Oregon, and I mean, quickly we were quickly infatuated with each other.
It is like it's like the Queer Ultimatum, but in real life. Without the did they make the show based on your relationship?
Right.
No.
It's
not funny, but goodness. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, but low key that show was like low key activating. So I was like,
I bet.
Yeah. So Ash moved out here to Oregon probably within how many months of us?
Like 5 months.
Well, yeah. I mean, we went back and forth, Oklahoma, Port Bend, over and over. And then I was over it. I wanted her here in Oregon. And so she moved her whole life out here, and we got married last month on May 14th.
Yay, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And you all work together too. So you're married, moved out, living together, working together, all of those things.
Yeah, it started out, after I first moved out here, I started my own coaching business, helping queer women, working with queer women. And then in the last year, Dawn and I decided to combine what we do. I'm a somatic practitioner and work with individuals one-on-one, and Dawn had been working with queer couples. And so we thought, why don't we bring this together? That way couples can get the couple support and they can get the individual one-on-one support that you often need when you're trying to repair.
Yeah. It is a great combination. That's for sure. Breathing is so important. Okay, that's the very basic level of it. Very basic.
Keep breathing.
Yes, keep breathing. You've already talked a little bit about this, but how the trauma and intensity of divorce, and you've been through a few, you've had different experiences with it. Why is divorce so traumatic and so hard? That disconnecting point with your partner.
I mean, goodness, the most obvious answer is your whole life can be just blown apart. I know for my first divorce that I went through, I lost so much community and connection, which, I mean, when it comes to connection and it comes to love, right? But connecting with other human beings, this is as important to us as food, as water. We need to have it. And so whenever we lose that community suddenly, as it pertains to who we are, right? Coming out and living authentically, it's a really scary and devastating thing to go through. It's primal, the fear that comes. And goodness, then my second divorce, I mean, same thing. Lost a lot of relationship there too. Friendship, of course, family, my ex-wife's family. Yeah, what would you add?
I mean, I think like one of our human needs is certainty, and like our life, like everything changes. You have no idea how every element of your life will change, and you have no idea what it's going to look like. And it's terrifying. I think, I mean, on a biological level, I mean, attachment is a real thing. And that creates a real difficulty with the separation of that. I think that creates like confusion in us. Like, I think even if we know the relationship isn't good for us, we'll still stay at times because of that.
Because of the attachment, that connection that you need.
Yeah, I think we attach, our brains are wired to attach to survive. I know you were talking to us about attachment and all that, so we can get into that. But I think that's one reason why it does feel so terrifying. Like Ash was saying, it's like primal.
And that unknown, all of these unknowns that are coming up all at once with relationships, finances, you name it, like everything feels as if it's a question now. That uncertainty is what fuels anxiety within us. And so to have your whole world become uncertain is, I mean, it's a shock to the system, and it can feel incredibly overwhelming.
Yeah. And I think like the validity of like, I came from a very religious upbringing. I was raised Mormon. And so I'm one of 13 kids, and I was the first one to be divorced. And so, well, that's not true. The second one to be divorced, but they were already questioning, my sexuality or and then that's just more. It felt like more proof, that you're managing. That that's a whole different layer.
That's such a good point, because it feels like there's almost something to prove as a queer person, right? Especially if, I mean, that's what I experienced too. Like coming out of my marriage with my ex-husband, it felt like there was so much to prove in this new relationship that I was in, that if it didn't work, then, well, here's the proof for all of my friends and family that, well, maybe I'm not gay, right? Maybe the phase has passed, or maybe, well, this just isn't real. And so that's a big thing that came up in my own personal walk of divorce, and I know comes up for other queer individuals too.
Yeah, I feel like it came up for me too. And our parents, both my partners and I, we got divorced around the same time, moved in together shortly after with our kids and all of that. And I think both of our parents, our families didn't really know how to support us. And I think it was on two levels. Like, you're strong women making this decision. You left your husbands. You know what you need. You don't need support. And then there was also like, you're queer now. I have no idea what to do with you.
Who are you?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Like, I'm a new person.
Yeah.
It does feel like everything's new. I was just telling Carly that the other day. She's like, why are you so cold all the time? I was like, I don't know. I feel like everything's new. My body's changed.
Yeah.
You know, what I need is different. You know, it's so wild.
How new is it for you, the relationship?
Carly and I have been together for 2.5 years, and I've been legally divorced for a little over a year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. This is a fun season.
Yes. Oh no, what's this season?
And it's like you are meeting new parts of yourself, new versions of yourself that you just didn't get the opportunity to be with or meet before.
Yeah.
And so of course you're a totally different person. Yeah.
And as you build through it, as you heal more, you figure out who I am today, and build on top of that and become stronger. And
oh my gosh, I feel like who I am today versus who I was in my previous marriage is not the same. I'm not even close to the same person. There's something about grief and loss like that can really develop you. And I mean, I remember really trying to find a way away from the grief, like the suffering that it felt like. I know that so many people have been betrayed and cheated on and lost, had loved ones die, but there's something when you're in it. It doesn't matter how many people you tell about it. It's like, it's such a lonely experience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then just kind of found myself surrendering to it, and just kind of letting it do work in me in a way. I feel like Ash and I both have said it feels like it developed us into the partners we are for each other.
Totally.
Yeah. So how do you get to that spot you're at in this season? So you're going through, you have all this grief, you have this intensity of the breakup, you're moving, you're trying to figure everything out. And so now you have to heal. And figuring out how to heal in that messy middle and that murky space of, all of that pain is difficult. But what are some of the cornerstones to actually healing and turning into that space of growth outside of the intensity of grief?
I think of what you say, like you started following your yeses. Yeah. Well, I found my voice. That was, my last marriage, there was emotional abuse present, and just on and off throughout it, but specifically and especially at the end. But so whenever we did separate and I got into my own space, I found, there was heavy grief to move through, but part of what helped me get through it was, finding my voice, but setting up these safety nets is what I called them for myself. I felt that I was just falling in space, like I was just in a perpetual fall, and I didn't know where I was going to land, when I was going to land. It just feels awful and shitty and terrifying. And so I felt like I had to set up these safety nets, which was multiple therapists is how it started. I was all therapists. Like, I think I had 4 therapists at one time that I was.
Dang, you are equipped.
Oh, I was
fully resourced.
The pain was big. The pain was real. I'll tell you that much. And then just seeking out any other resources on my own to be able to turn toward myself. That's what I didn't want to do, was turn outward to everything else, go out and party or drink or just
self-destruct.
Because that felt like a really easy path to take. And also like a really lonely and sad path. And I knew that. And so through the work, I ended up finding a part of me again, which just felt, and especially when I don't know, the work had started, everything was turning, and then Dawn and I connected, and there was something about getting the truth from Dawn, co-collaborating, I suppose, sharing each of our stories. We formed the truth. We got to the bottom of it, and it freed me up.
Yeah, you said we offered each other the gift of truth in the moment. Felt like precious.
I felt like a brand new person when, in a matter of a couple of hours of a conversation, I felt like a brand new person and getting answers that I had been longing for and felt crazy about.
People asked us, excuse me, once they found out about it, they're like, are you angry? Are you enraged? And I said, I felt relief. I feel like I was going crazy. Totally. There was something that wasn't lining up. Yeah, I interrupted you though.
No, you're okay. Some of those cornerstones, gosh, well, one, giving myself the space to be able to be with the big emotions that came up. Not trying to busy myself with seeing friends and doing things all the time, but to slow down, and when something big came up, allowing myself to fall into it. I was lucky enough to get to work from home at the time, and so I had that kind of space. But yeah, giving myself the space to be with those things, not busying myself too much, surrounding myself with people who had space for my pain. It became very clear with some friends that I was connecting with that they didn't have the room for it, the capacity to be with it. Not because they didn't love me, but it was a reflection of what they had the capacity for. And it was important for me to recognize that, because that would have been a harmful space for me to try to get support from.
Yeah.
Not
that they're harmful in and of themselves, but
I did the opposite. Like, she sat with her feelings, and I'm like, fuck that. I'm gonna, like, I felt like, I don't know if any of your listeners can relate with this, but I just started with like movement in my life. Like, I'm gonna rebuild something great. I'm gonna rebuild myself. I'm gonna, when emotion comes up, it's in the way. I've got more important things to do. So my, like, I mean, I think pretty obviously my grief and process has lasted longer, because Ash, the way she, like, you have like dates that matter to you, that you sit with it and you light a candle, and she, journals.
Acknowledge it, yeah.
And when I feel an emotion, I'm like, I get busier, I make myself
just a coping mechanism.
And also an avoidant attachment style.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Lines up with the avoidance.
I do wish Carly was here, because we'd be like, yep, I'm Ash, you're done. I can see it. This happens every time.
Yeah.
She's always like, why am I 2 weeks behind you? I was like, well, I sat down and thought about it, thinking about it. But you get there, right? You get there. There's always a point where you need to get there and you need to move forward, no matter how you do it.
It's gonna come up. It's gonna come up. It's gonna sit in your face. And if it takes years to do it, then it will, right? I mean, then the more we push it away, the longer it'll come up, and sometimes the bigger it'll come up, right? It's kind of like steam that builds up in your body. Eventually it has to offload that steam somehow. And so
it never goes away. Your body remembers.
Yeah. Tera, this can be your first like long form interview. We can go like Joe Rogan style, 3 hours.
Let's do it. Well, we can always split it up into 2 parts and be like, talk about everything. Okay, well, we can cut it off at any time. All right. I am curious about that space when you're in that healing space, you're trying to trust yourself again. For me, one of the hardest things was trusting myself in another relationship. Like, I was in a new relationship as I was going through the divorce, but I also had a lot of people I've lost, friends I lost through it, that were pretty intense losses in my life. And so I had to get to a spot where I trusted that. What are some ways that you might tell people how to trust that, how to build the stronger relationships, how to, do the healing and learn how to connect with others at the same time?
This is such a good question. Oh my goodness. I wish I had something like this to listen to while I was going through it. So I love that, just doing this at all. But what comes up for you right away, if anything?
I think, I feel like it kind of goes a few different directions, but my process of trusting myself had started before that, but this definitely impacted because I was raised Mormon. And so coming out of that, I would consider it a cult for myself. Learning how to trust myself through the deconstruction process, and then entering into a marriage that was just very deceitful. I feel like I was working with a therapist, and she was trying to help me see, like, you trust people until proven otherwise, kind of thing. But I didn't really, I don't know why. I felt like I just got more confident in myself the further I got with it. So I don't know if I'm the right one to ask this question to. I didn't have a problem trusting friends after that. I just felt like I learned a really deep, painful lesson. I learned about myself. I learned about, relationships. But for you, it seemed like that is still been kind of a process for trusting people. That's something that I haven't been able to relate with.
Yeah. I feel really lucky because I found a partner who, I mean, could help me heal quickly. I will tell you, Tara, whenever Dawn and I first met, and we were very clear there was something here that felt big, not just some spark or like flippant thing, or that it was just in trauma. It felt much bigger and deeper.
Like sacred.
Yeah. And I remember telling Dawn, like, I got to heal myself first. Before I get into a relationship with you, I've got to get my shit straight. Like I things are whack in here right now. And she was like, actually, it's not necessary to get to this point where you're healed. And what does that even mean, right? Like, what exactly are you saying and getting at when you're healed enough to be in relationship, which I think is an awesome question that many of us don't ask when we start throwing out, I gotta be healed first.
Yeah.
But as it pertains to friendship, part of the trauma that I experienced through this last divorce, friendships were engulfed in that, not just because they were connected to me and my ex-wife, as a couple, but because they were literally involved in, well, first of all, Dawn's ex-wife, she was befriending me the whole time while she was engaging with my ex-wife. Yeah, to get access to my wife. And so she was building up this relationship.
Real gem.
And so there was a trauma that occurred there just around friendship and new friendship. And then one of my best friends, one of my closest friends at that time, she actually slept with my ex-wife the very night that my ex-wife said, hey, I don't know if I can be in our marriage. And we were together for 7 years, mind you. Married for 1, but together for 7. And on the very night, she ended up sleeping with one of our really our best friends. And so friendship trauma, that's something I'm still healing from. And that's just taken time, as I've been learning how to trust myself and find my voice, and what are my boundaries, what are my expectations out of friendship. And that's just taken time to explore and get answers from myself, and also putting myself out there, right, for some new friendships. And realizing this ain't it, like, this isn't what I want. So I don't know, that's still developing, but gosh, healing, there is no way that I would have found the healing that I have found had it not been for you. Because we experience trauma, we experience disconnection, we experience rupture in relationship with people. And we experience the healing in relationship too. It's not to say we can't heal some parts on our own. We totally can. I was doing that for a while, but the deep work came when Dawn and I decided to actually pursue a relationship and bump into those scary parts. My therapist would tell me what Dawn's therapist said, which was, you trust somebody until proven otherwise. And I was like, that is bullshit.
No way. They have to prove they're trustworthy first.
Like, don't we enter into the relationship not trusting them? She's like, so it's been a process.
I think, what's that?
Go ahead. I was gonna ask about the connection between the two of you. How did you at the same time heal in that space? So Dawn, you were pushing, like, pushing might be a strong word, but you were advocating for it's accurate. Okay. I didn't want to put that on you, but
I wanted all of it.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. So you're in this relationship, you're healing, and you're together. How do you support each other in these moments where, I know, like, a holiday comes up and you're intensely grieving over your past relationship, or something happens, but you are also in this new relationship? How did you do that?
My brain is going 3 different directions, but ultimately what, we had to do was accept that because we were moving together so quickly in the midst of divorce and grief, that we were going to be facing, more intensity at quicker paces. Buttons would get pushed more, fears would come up more than if we had taken a longer process. We kind of had to accept that. And also because of that, we had to come up with some agreements that, I'm grieving the person that broke your marriage up. I'm grieving your enemy, which kind of added an element to it. Yeah. But I always tried to create space for us where Ash could always talk about her ex. Like if there's a moment she missed her, if there's a moment that she wanted to reminisce about, we would offer that to each other. And we would ask, like, are you okay if I had this memory or a day of grief? You hit these pockets, right? And we set up these agreements to help each other grieve. The first time we had sex, I found myself like really being shocked at the grief that came up. My body was catching up with my head, kind of, and there was space for it. Like Ash was like caring and not jealous or angry. Like, don't talk about. We work with a lot of couples, and that's something that I never can understand when someone's like, don't talk about your ex or don't talk about your past. But we created space for each other to be in the grief. And then, I'm trained in a science-based approach to couples therapy. So I know that you don't have to be secure to be in a secure relationship. Right. We can actually heal better and quicker the part of our brain that's been traumatized, that can be anxious or avoidant, within a primary relationship. And so creating safety between the two of us was the quickest way to start moving towards that security. I'm saying a lot. Do you want to add anything?
Oh, you're saying like really wonderful things. Yeah, I would say, yeah, we really did give each other the space to grieve. And we were we were open, direct, honest about everything that was coming up. And we also asked of one another, if you feel like you're not in a space to hear this right now, which we would check in if something came up. Hey, are you in a place where you can hear this? I want to share this with you. And if you're not, let me know, right? Like, that's okay. I don't know that has ever happened though. You've always
sometimes we'll get into it, like we've been get wrapped up in the story, and then we'll go on for too long. And then I'm like, this, you need to kind of catch ourselves. But that was in the beginning. We were just overly processing everything. But the reason why I feel like I could step into relationship quicker with Ash was because you said, I have my own joy. I have my own peace. I'm not coming to another person to get that back. But she said, you turn the volume up to the joy. And so I didn't feel like responsible for her, and she would have to tell me, like, Dawn, I just need you to know I'm still grieving. I'm still very much in my grief. And so we were kind of holding it in that way.
Just really gently. And I knew what it was like to be in a relationship with somebody who doesn't allow you to process the grief of an ex or lost marriage. I experienced that when I left my ex-husband and entered into this relationship with my now ex-wife. There was a lot of energy around, like, don't talk about him. And if you talk about him, you must still be into him, want him, miss him, which I did miss him. There were parts I missed. That was true. That's a part of human experience and attaching to people. But getting to really openly discuss and grieve with Dawn in a safe way. I think that's what allowed me to process it all as quickly as I have, which I'm still processing does not look like it.
Never.
But it allowed me to really move through it and feel safe getting to have that. Like, I didn't have to erase a part of my past in order to have you, or to in order to get love. I didn't have to act like some part of me didn't exist.
Yeah. And I feel like I've been in both situations where I'm like, oh, I can't hear about your ex anymore. And we have kiddos in our relationship. So we have to talk to the other parents. We have both dads they're there. They're not going away. But it can be difficult. So I appreciate that. Like, give your space to hold each other in it. Give yourself space to, put boundaries around it if it's too intense at the moment. But yeah.
In setting up agreements that make you both feel safe, that serve the relationship. So what can we set up or establish that will remove all the threat or energy that's going into it without it? So if you're thinking of it like guardrails that's keeping you safe, it's like we made an agreement, like no reaching out to your ex unless we talk about it first. At the beginning, there was a lot of interactions, going through the divorce, separating things. And then we ultimately came to a place where we decided we're going to be a brick wall to them. They will not have any access to us ever, not through Venmo or or Instagram. No, we're done. But we decided to do that to protect the relationship, and it created security, and then trust can start building off of that.
So were most of your agreements in the place of like your relationship first over that one, but then, allowing for the healing too? So like that agreement, for example, is like you're connected first before you reach out. What would be some other examples in that too?
Of agreements that we made?
Yeah, agreements based on, well, I guess I asked two questions there, didn't I? It's mostly based on starting the agreements with like your relationship first and understanding your healing and connection in that space. Is that correct?
I would say the agreements that we set up then, I mean, our agreements have shifted over time, right? The agreements we had in the first couple the agreements we had in the first couple of months to help care for the threat that was very present in our lives at the time look different now. But yeah, what were some of those agreements that we set up? I know part of it was if they reach out, we'll let the other know.
Yeah.
Right. If we want to reach out, let the other know.
Yeah. I think being like, because we're different people and we respond differently to things, our perceived threat or whatever can create a perceived threat mattered. Like I had an old friend that came into town the day after Ash moved here, and she didn't know her, and it was a long best time friend with like, old previous feelings. And that created some fear, like, all of a sudden. And so what I wanted to do was establish safety right away. And so we made an agreement like, okay, right now what we need to do is establish like, we need to slow everything down. And so if this is going to be scary for you in this moment, I care more about you in this moment than doing what I want to do. Thinking like long-term wise.
Yeah.
So we just like, there was all these little fires that could flare up because of the grief. Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
just in the way we cared for each other.
Yeah. With like an outside relationship, like an agreement around that's outside relationships. And that one those can feel really big. I mean, right off the heels of divorce and of like betrayal and all this and that. But what were some of the other agreements that we had?
I mean, we've had agreements that have stuck with us. Like our relationship is number one, period. We're gonna protect it. And like we say, like in public and in private, like we make decisions together. That's just how we function. A big one that we do started then and now is whenever there's a moment of you see your partner in distress or your relationship in distress, that's it. Pause the presses. This is what matters. I'm going to care for this in a way that you feel that I show up for you and care for you and bring you relief.
Pausing the presses in the sense that like, like we're talking about, I don't know, what we're going to have for dinner that night and who's coming over, right? And you have a response come up, right? That you feel
always in the most inconvenient.
It's always in the most inconvenient. You have a response come up to it. Pausing the presses is like, okay, we're no longer talking about our friends who are coming over or the dinner we're having. What's coming up in you right now? What's bringing up this response?
Learning how to bring your partner back to a place of safety, right? In the moment that they're in stress. That's something that we practice from the beginning to now.
Yeah, I really like that. Does it work for, I'm thinking about, as you talk about, you bring grief into the relationship, but you also could bring these toxic patterns that you have from your past relationship, or things that maybe are habits that you didn't realize were bad habits or whatnot. Do those type of agreements and this type of system work for that space too? And how do the two of you talk about those when they come up?
Yeah, I mean, I would say one of the patterns that came from my last relationship, I guess it was more so what I experienced was like yelling, just getting really loud with one another. And although we don't yell with each other, yeah, we don't do that, but that was an agreement that we had. Like, we're not going to yell, right? We were not going to engage in conversations together where we do yell. And if I have started to raise my tone, which I have, I've started to raise my tone, and Dawn lets me know, like, hey, I'm noticing that you're raising your tone, and I want to listen to you. I can't whenever you're raising your tone. I want to have this conversation, but if we need to pause and come back, like, let's do that.
One thing in the beginning was that you did was she wouldn't tell me when she was frustrated with me. Like I started picking it up, like probably within the first few months of living together. She would get like kind of move around the house and get quiet, and I started realizing, oh, she's frustrated with me, which is so cute. I just love so cute. And so I pulled her over to me and I said, hey, you are allowed to be upset with me. And there's no consequences here. I want to know what's going on in there. And it was like, that was like scary for you to do, to like start like taking small risks and saying like, hey, when you said that, that hurt my feelings. Because there wasn't space for that with Elle.
No, there wasn't. Well, and also like the passive aggressiveness, like that's straight up from my mom. Like,
our past relationships are not just marriage, but they're parents.
She knows how to walk around a house and everybody knows what's up, but she's not saying it. And I will say that was childhood. That was childhood. But in my last marriage, like there wasn't space for me to come forward and say, I'm upset about this. This thing bothered me. Because that would lead to just a massive conflict. And it always, I know always is a big word, strong word to use, but regularly, if I were to bring something up, I would end up apologizing for it, or not knowing if our relationship would last. So it was this perpetual anxiety around, I can't bring it up because it goes nowhere. And I might lose the person that I love if I do.
Right. So in this new space, you have to trust the safety and security of each other. And over time, it's hard. It's a huge risk.
Those moments, Tera, when you are triggered or you are scared and it's met with relief or connection or safety, that's what repairs the brain. When we've looked at this and studied this, those moments are the most critical. Attachment styles aren't personalities, right? So you and your partner can move into secure. And in those moments when I'm like caring for like, hey, you don't have to be upset or you don't have to be afraid to share with me. That's repairing this belief that she had. Like, oh, if I share, then this will happen, which creates disconnection. Like how many people sweep things under the rug because they're afraid of, but those moments are huge.
I always like to say your body is like, it's building up receipts, right? New receipts. We have all these receipts on what we've experienced and what we've known as life. And so to be able to move toward a secure functioning relationship, you need to build up new receipts, right? New things, new memories to look back on and within your own body and your own recall to know, okay, that's safe. This person is safe, at least.
And it is possible for your brain to shift and relearn, right? You don't have to ever be stuck in that. It may be a roller coaster, right? Like it gets further and further away how much I'm triggered by something or whatever, but
that's why it's so important that you pick a partner that is safe. Like you're not going to find someone who's perfectly healed or perfectly secure,
right?
But you can do it as a couple, and so it's so important. So many people will just repeat the same pattern and find the familiar.
Well, and the familiar can feel safe. Right? Because it is familiar. Our system and our body knows what it's like. And so we're drawn to it. So there can be this false sense of security, right? that, oh, I feel like there's a spark here and this feels like home, this person, when in reality, right, it's just a reflection of your early attachment, not necessarily that it's a healthy relationship.
Yeah. Can you, I know I'm asking for a quick explanation of what attachment styles is, but what's not really it's not possible to quickly explain it, but you've mentioned attachment styles a couple of times. Do you think can you explain a little bit the basics of what attachment styles are and why they're important in your healing and understanding of security and connection?
Yeah. Well, I mean, attachment starts, we come out attached. We come out of the womb attached. We are 25% wired for our attachment just coming out of the womb. And then we are 70% wired. I believe it's by the time we're 3 years old. And so by the time you're 3 years old, we can predict with 70% certainty what your attachment style will be like. Anxious, avoidant, secure. There are other ones. Yeah, there are other ones too. But
yeah.
And it's how we get our needs met in childhood. When we are a child, we're wired to attach for our survival. Because
I think the important thing is with what you're saying is we're born into dependency.
Yes.
We can't take care of ourselves and like basic needs like food, shelter, water, apart from touch, comfort, safety, eye contact.
Well, and even think about like how old you were when you got to the point where you could meet those needs for yourself. Like, yep, I'm ready to go out on my own and provide shelter, food, and water. Right. Like,
I still struggle.
Yeah. So what age is that? 24, 38? I'm getting there.
Yeah. And so the attachment, we're biologically wired to attach to keep us alive. And so we develop this attachment based on how our needs were or were not being met as children. And as we evolve into adults, right, we seek out partners. It's kind of like we feel drawn to partners who we feel like is the puzzle piece that this is a reflection of the love that we knew when we were younger, right? So maybe we had a parent who was not there for us consistently, and we had to work really, really hard for their attention and for their love, for their affection, just to look at us, right? And so we respond the same way in relationship as we get older. And so something in our system tells us, oh, this is familiar, the fact that I have to seek out your love, right? You're emotionally unavailable, but to me that reads as love because it's what I know. And so we can end up in these relationships where, for this example, we are anxiously attached, right? And so that's kind of like how we get there.
Yeah, I think, primary primary partners or primary attachment styles, it goes between parent and partner. When I see you as permanent, that's when I've attached. Now you're my permanent partner, and that's when we start getting triggered. Like most people think, once I get married or move in or we may get a puppy together, we'll feel more secure. And in reality, we'll start to get more activated because now I'm attached and those things will come to life.
Well, and there's more to lose.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, we start like, let's move in together. Let's get a dog together.
Yeah.
Now it gets scarier and scarier because there's more on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can remember, this is just bringing up a story and talking about my relationship, but we were at we had our second anniversary trip and we had an amazing time and we felt secure and attached and talked a lot about what we wanted for our futures. And then we got home and I feel like the next week after that, we were so activated and triggered that we had like the most intense week after our trip. And I could see those patterns coming over time. We decided to move in together. It got more intense, it is. Yeah, it does play out.
Yeah.
Really does.
Yeah. I mean, the beautiful thing is you don't have to stay anxious. You're not born avoidant,
Right.
So this is the perfect place because our brain is so beautifully pliable. You can actually repair that together. And that's the work that we do is we teach queer couples how to move from secure, anxious or avoidant, anxious, etc., into secure, practicing certain skills in those moments that you're triggered.
Yeah. Is there different types of support in secure responses, repair moments that each attachment style needs? So if I'm avoidant, what things might I? Yeah. Could you give a few examples? So we can talk about anxious and avoidant. Is there other?
Oh, that's
there's
the
disorganized, right? We could talk about
yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
That's a whole other story, right? So if we're
Yeah.
talking about anxious and avoidant, what are some of the supports they need for healing?
That I mean, we do a 10-week course to cover all this,
Yeah,
but
sure. Could you give us a couple examples?
yeah, well, I
Yeah.
mean, because they're different wounds, like just an avoidant, which we also call an island. They never had someone come find them. They don't have an expectation. They learn how to survive on their own.
Mhm.
So I identify more as a avoidant, and you can have parts of both, you know. I can be anxious at times, but avoidant, Ash, we tell couples, like, you have to become an expert on your partner. I want you to study your partner like you're getting a degree in them.
Yeah.
And so she's had to learn how to help me in the moments that I'm being avoidant, the button is getting pushed, and I will shut down quickly. I've had to my whole life. I learned how to recover by myself. I know how to do it now, but that threatens the security of the relationship if I keep doing that. And so Ash has learned to reach me as an avoidant. So one thing an avoidant hates is being intruded upon or interrupted. If I'm reading a book and she's like, "Hey, did you see the bird outside?" Like, that for some reason is really hard, and if my independence is threatened. So she's learned how to approach it in a way that she can have access to me without me feeling like I'm on my own. Or let me answer this question better. If I shut down as an avoidant, Ash has learned to say less words at that time, because if I shut down, that could scare her, right? The more distant I become, because remember, anxious partners, they had access to comfort and touch at times and other times not.
Right.
They experienced it, and sometimes their parent was right in front of them, but they couldn't access them. So that's playing out at that moment.
And that could be emotional or physical,
yeah.
right? Like,
yeah.
It's not just.
Yeah. So if she can help me come back, if I shut down by saying less words, maybe lead with touch, offering space, whatever that is, without judgment or threat, I can come back faster. And then if anything came up in between that interaction, she can tell me, like, "Hey, it really scares me when you shut down like that. What's that like for you? Where do you go?" And so with an anxious partner, what would you say
that you do for me?
Yeah.
One big thing is whenever we do talk, like if we're moving into conflict, Dawn will make sure that you're not standing in front of me, right? You'll step to the side to make sure that I have plenty of space, that I don't feel trapped where I am, which I think that's more so a part of my own personal history rather than so much anxious. Trying to think of
I'll make sure the worst anxious partners can tend to think worst case scenario.
Yes. And so Dawn, what she'll do is kind of jump ahead, like, "Hey, we're okay, right? I just want to be able to talk about this with you.
Our relationship is okay.
Relationship is okay." She'll usually lead with that. "We're okay. Like, I just want to talk about this," which then puts my threat system to rest a little bit more. But the big thing between, when it comes to avoidant or anxious attachment, we're all trying to get the same thing, or we want to feel safe. That's what the need we want met is to feel safe. We just get to it in different ways, right? I get to it, or someone who's more anxiously attached, they believe that, okay, if I can just keep you within close proximity, I'll be safe, right? I'm not safe out here on my own. And for you, as more of an avoidant attached, it's I get my safety by being alone, right? And getting my distance from other people who I have learned throughout my history aren't safe. And so we have a little bit of you're more islandy. I can be like,
I think
I can
you
go
probably
between
are more
both.
islandy than anxious. I was married to an anxious partner, and that was different. But yeah, learning how to respond to your partner's attachment style in a way that you're like, you have to think pro self. Like, if I can figure out how to get her to feel safe in this moment and stop spinning with fear, that's actually going to benefit me. And so when you turn on each other and you're like, "What? You're too much," or "Why are you like this?" or don't
storm off,
right? That's making my life more difficult.
It's actually, it's self-care to learn how to care for your partner. Yeah, that in and of itself is self-care.
We can talk about this all day long.
Yeah.
I think we're scratching the surface.
I know. Yes, we can only scratch the surface. We only have so much time together. But I guess what I'm hearing you say is it's important to understand your attachment style, especially when you're healing, because when your trigger moments come up, being able to understand where they come from is important. And you should do that with your therapist or through a course like you have, but understanding what those are is really important. And then understanding what your partner's is important for building security and for being able to build this safe space between the two of you so you can connect on a better level, whether that's for yourself or for your partnership or
I think
whatever.
that's key. Like I think when we're dating each other, we're asking each other like, what's your favorite color, and tell me about your childhood pet and stuff. And when I have a kickoff call with a couple,
I don't know if that's what lesbians talk about.
That's true. There's not a lot of talking, probably. Well, we go deep. Fair. We go
really fair. Deep, really fast.
Yeah.
No, we're like, tell me everything. Tell me when you got hurt the most.
That's
like,
so true. I want to.
What was it like?
Yeah. I think in the first session with a couple, I'll ask them to introduce each other to me. Like, tell me, what do you think I should know about them? Because I'm trying to figure out how well they know each other. And we have to know our partner's history. We have to know, when they get upset that you're late, why is that so loaded for them? And I want to know how well they know that, because if you don't understand where it's coming from, you can't care for it.
Right. That's so beautiful to think about that space, to be able to support each other and find that safe space through the hardest moments. It really is. It really is.
Yeah, it can throw you off, right within the first, when couples start using this practice we teach them, they're like, they don't know how to respond. When their partner actually uses the skill in the moment, they're used to something totally opposite. It's like they feel frozen.
Yeah, well, and is it safe to feel this? Is it safe to feel like this is okay? Can I trust this? Yeah.
Will this last?
Will it last? So that's a big question.
But if you keep doing it and it does last, it's good. But if it doesn't, you need to get out of there. Well, it's whole nother podcast too. Talking about the flags and where to go. Okay.
For sure.
So I don't know if there's a way to really wrap it up. I'm sure you have lots of important things we all need to keep in mind. But if you were able to today, at top of mind, tell all the listeners, what is something that's the most important for you to really focus on after your breakup, after your divorce, and as you're trying to heal and rebuild, what might you say to them?
I think that a lot of us are raised to appear a certain way. I would say my lesson was don't be afraid to make a mess. There's so much judgment, oh, you're moving too fast, or you just got divorced, or you're doing what now? There's so much judgment in it. At times we can put on ourselves, but I would say don't be afraid to mess things up, and
don't be afraid to mess things up.
I
would say give yourself space. If you are moving through a divorce and separation and you're in the thick of that healing, give yourself the space to feel what's coming up and get yourself as many resources as you can. Resources being things that help you feel a little more present, things that can bring you a little bit of ease, right? And a sense of safety. Whatever feels safe for you, that's what I want you to reach out to. Okay, this brings a little bit of calm to my system rather than this overwhelmed free fall that can often be the experience. But
it seems like in both those cases, whether you're giving yourself permission to be messy or to take space, it's also be selfish and take what you need in that space. That's what I'm hearing, but maybe it's because I'm learning how to be selfish a little bit more, and so that I'll feel selfish to take your own space.
Process all in and of itself.
We make so many decisions based upon how other people will feel about it. Are you going to be uncomfortable? Okay, I'll wait, or we'll hide. We'll just keep it a secret then, and then we can't be fully transparent. But yeah, you got to decide what's right for you. There's no book on this.
No, I wish there was.
Yeah.
It would be nice. Would be nice. That's why we have the Queer Divorce Club. That's why we have work like yours. Can you tell us where our listeners can find you all online?
Oh, yeah. We're on TikTok and we're on Instagram. Is it Ash and Donna Noble?
I think so. Yeah, and TikTok is like queer couples experts.
Yeah.
And then we have a podcast called Queer Couples Conversations.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for giving me this time today. And I feel like we could have talked forever. I'm trying to have so many questions. It's so good. So everybody should find your work on TikTok, find your podcast, because it's a lot of good stuff. Good stuff that we really need.
Yeah. Thanks for having us on. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, it's really been a pleasure to get to sit and hang out with you for a bit.
Yeah, it's been lovely. Thank you so very much.
Hey, the sun's shining today. I gotta get